This is a case that, according to author Eve Lazarius, can generate quite a bit of animosity if not covered with great care. Apparently, there was a lot of misinformation about the case when it first broke, and the untruths continued throughout the over 6 decades that this case has been unsolved. The tragic disappearance continues to divide the town of Willmar, located just outside of Invermere, BC. I do recommend that you go and listen to Cold Case Canada, The Search for Brenda Byman, episode 38, narrated by Eve Lazarius. Brenda Byman was 12 years old when she went to her first sleepover at a friend's house in Willmar, BC. That day was May 7th, 1961. Brenda reportedly walked out of Willmar towards Lake Enid with 4 other youth and never returned. She was a shy girl and lived in the Invermere area in Dry Gulch. She was born on March 10th, 1949 to parents Hilda and Inger Byman. Brenda was very close to her family, and all her siblings were especially close. Brenda was last seen by her family on May 6th, 1961. She went to spend the night with her friend Connie for the first time. On May 7th, Connie went to visit another friend, and Brenda walked to the lake with Connie's older sister. Lake Enid was 5 kilometers from Willmar, and some local male youths joined them for the hike. Edward Carson, John Carson, Elwood Godlian, Vivian was Connie's older sister, and Brenda had a picnic and possibly a swim in the lake. At approximately 2:30 p.m., 15-year-old Vivian and 15-year-old Edward split off from the group to go home. They were dating, and Brenda was left alone with 17-year-old John and 13-year-old Elwood. After Brenda failed to turn up back at her grandmother's house by 3 p.m., her uncle went out looking for her. He ran into some local boys who said she left the area. A search began in the area around Lake Enid. For 2 weeks, the search intensified and blew into the largest search in the valley's history. Farmers, laborers, businessmen, and workers from a local sawmill scoured the woods. Divers and searchers dredged the lake and nearby Munn Lake as well. They searched the Columbia River with the aid of helicopters, horseback riders, and rescue dogs. Almost 600 people searched the area. It was searched so thoroughly that one of them said if somebody would have dropped a jackknife anywhere in that area, they would have found it. The wetlands and their tributaries were also searched well into 1962, along with Horse Thief Canyon and Toby Creek Canyon. Nothing ever turned up that had anything to do with Brenda Byman, although they did solve a cold case of a missing man from the 1930s, a Russian man that had gone into the mountains to die. They found his skull fragments. The search was so thorough that they turned up shoes and scarves and pieces of clothing, but none of them ever matched Brenda's. According to John and Elwood, Brenda walked up a hill towards her grandmother's at 4:30 p.m. They told her that she was heading in the wrong direction, but she told them, quote, to shut up, and continued on up the hill. Brenda's sister Audrey doubted that Brenda would tell anyone to shut up. She was just too shy. Hilda, Brenda's mother, told police that 17-year-old John had had sex with Brenda, but nobody believed her. John denied the accusation when interrogated by police. That's a pretty intense accusation because it is considered rape at his age of 17 and Brenda being only 12. Years later, John did finally admit to having sex with Brenda, but he said that the sex was consensual. He admitted to having sex with 12-year-old Brenda more than once. He also said that after Brenda ran off and John and Elwood told her that she was going in the wrong direction, that about 5 minutes later they heard voices in the distance and a car door slam. This could explain why through the searches that were conducted, they failed to turn anything up. Not even a thread or a hair. Nothing. The RCMP did latch on to this possibility as well, because according to the newspaper reports from 1961, the headlines read, "Car sought in missing girl case." In the text it read, RCMP are asking the driver of a light blue sedan or station wagon with a white top to report to the nearest detachment. The car was seen on a side road between White Cliff and Marysville, near Kimberley, BC, Monday afternoon. In the car were a man driver and a young girl passenger. This was eventually forgotten because it was never followed up on, maybe because the police were focused in a different direction. This case has never been solved and has many twists and turns and some leads that just go nowhere. And some leads are nothing more than gossip tales, or finger-pointing. Each family involved has their own theories about what happened to Brenda. One of the theories are that John Carson and Elwood Godlin are responsible for Brenda's disappearance, given they likely were the last ones to see her alive on the day she went missing. Many are suspicious of their changing stories and John's claim of consensual sex with a 12-year-old. They feel their version of events, wherein Brenda ran away, was created to hide their own involvement. It should be reminded that both Elwood and John passed polygraph tests that were administered to them later in the investigation. However, investigators themselves question the authenticity of the results, given 30 years had passed since Brenda's disappearance. Another theory brought up by John and Elwood was that she was abducted by a passerby in a vehicle, even though not much evidence backs this theory. And some believe that Brenda just got lost in the forest. But after the intensive search and over 500 people scouring every square foot of the area, that seems to be a weak theory. Another strange theory is that Brenda was sent to Ontario and returned years later under a new name. However, there is no evidence to support that, and there is no evidence to support that she ever left BC or Wilmer. Another theory is that Brenda's father killed her and buried her body in a well on his property, that he just lost his mind and killed her for unknown reasons. In the 1970s, 3 10-year-old boys came across a set of bones in a shallow grave in the woods. The boys were afraid to tell anyone because they were frightened that they would be in trouble for disobeying their grandmother's orders not to leave her property that day. In 2001, the RCMP heard this story about the boys finding bones in the woods and approached the now adult men. Unfortunately, the men couldn't remember the exact location, and none of the bones were ever found. A tracker from the original search recalls seeing one of the Carson boys with their mother at the staging area of Munn Lake. By 8 a.m., the shaken sawdust pile in Barber's farm was alight with flames. The tracker and his partner went to the pile and noted several shoe and boot prints around the pile, while also spotting another area burning up on the hillside halfway up. He returned to the pile 2 hours later, but it was just too hot to approach. This never sat well with him. The burn pile was located only about 800 feet from the shack John admitted to having sex with Brenda in. Investigators were intrigued with this new information, finding the tracker to be credible. They are planning a possible excavation one day. Police believe Brenda met with foul play and is deceased. Her DNA is on file along with her dental records, in the hopes that one day her body will be found. Corporal Brent Ayers of the Columbia Valley RCMP reopened the case in 2012 in hopes of one day solving the mystery. He said that after 50 years it is difficult to wade through the rumors of a file such as this. He added that he doesn't want to give up on it. Brenda's case is a powder keg in the Wilmer area, dividing so many families in such a small community against one another. So many pieces of information, finger-pointing, all jumbled up into an out-of-focus picture of what exactly happened that day. Corporal Ayers said that so many confusing pieces to this story just don't make sense. The fire that burned in the field that day was never included in the original RCMP report. He said it is still a mystery. If you look at the whole case objectively, things just do not make sense. Most of the teens with Brenda that day are now deceased, as are her parents, Ingvar and Hilda. Ingvar died in the 80s and Hilda died in 2016. I have only covered the basics of this disappearance. There is more information on the internet if you would like to delve in a little deeper. Stories of the Unsolved is one site I gleaned from, and Cold Case Canada are great places to start. Currently, this case is classified as a missing persons investigation, with foul play suspected. Brenda would be 74 years old if she were alive today. And of course, at the time of her disappearance, she was only 12. She was 4 feet 8 inches tall and weighed 90 pounds. She had strawberry blonde hair and brown eyes. If you have any information about Brenda Byman's disappearance, please contact the Columbia Valley Detachment of the RCMP at 250-342-9292 or Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-8477.